Welcome back, MTN Nets podcast. A very hard-fought Brooklyn loss tonight, 105-99 in overtime. Nets are now 0-4 in OT this year. We saw everything. We saw the Nets get up by 12 points or so. I got to check what their biggest lead was now. Largest lead was 11. I was close. But yeah, we saw Ziaire Williams have a career shooting night, which, of course, for a fan like me who wants to lose, it's good to see because he's young and hopefully back here in the future for next year. But at the same time, it's like, bro, we are trying to lose this game. There was that one three he had in the early third quarter where he shot it from 30 feet and it bounced off the front rim, bounced off the backboard, then went back in. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, how does this happen? So Ziaire, great night. We saw Trendon Watford get ejected for throwing some elbows and throwing some hard shoves towards Miles Turner. And then, of course, an exciting ending where Nic Claxton made a couple of blunders. That intercepted pass, which led to the Mathurin and one. Mathurin was great down the stretch in this game. And then the Nic Claxton travel, which you don't see very often. I think they were down by 4. They inbound to Claxton at half court, and his momentum had him take about 4 or 5 steps. And 99 times out of 100, that's not called. But in that one particular case, I think the crowd noise kind of impacted it. And maybe like the game was called kind of tight towards the end, of course, after that kind of mini brawl they had. Of course, refs are going to start blowing the whistle way more. But yeah, they called that travel. Nets go on to lose the game. So they dropped to 23-47. Great for the tank. The Nets remain in the 5th spot for now. I'm still concerned about it because Philly is a half game back, and Philly, oh my God, Philly the other night had that game won versus the Rockets. I really thought they won that game. They were up by like 8 points with 2 minutes to go. Quentin Grimes had that turnover. Şengün has that put back, and it was just crazy. So that pissed me off that the Sixers blew that game. Toronto's a game back or a game and a half back now at Brooklyn. So the Nets still have a shot at the 5th worst record, which is a pretty big difference. If they drop down from 5 to 7, you're dropping 11% in terms of getting a top 5 pick or top 4 pick. And then you're dropping down a whole 3% in terms of getting the first overall pick. So we're going to talk about the tank and all that later in this video. Kind of want to focus on this particular game versus the Pacers. I do want to touch on the Cam Thomas thing. Re-injures his hamstring for the 3rd time this season, which is very concerning. Maybe it's part of a tank, like maybe he's not that hurt, but we actually did see on the final shot of the last game he played, which I forget which game this was now, I think it might have been that Bulls game in Chicago, where on the final shot of the game, Cam Thomas came up a bit, he was limping a bit, didn't think it was that bad, but about a day later, the Nets shut him down for the year. So that was it for Cam Thomas's 4th season in the NBA. A disappointing one, obviously. I guess we'll just get into Cam Thomas now, but a disappointing season for the most part, but you look at Cam's numbers overall, and they were still pretty good. He averaged 24 points a game, 3 rebounds, almost 4 assists, shot basically 44% from the field. The assist numbers were getting higher. Of course, the final game he played before getting shut down for this season, he had a career-high 10 assists. I love seeing that. He had that 20-plus point game, 10 assists against the Bulls, and that's what you want to see. There was so many great assists he had in the first quarter of that game. It was 24 points, 10 assists, 6 rebounds. So not a bad way to end your season. I'm sure for him it's very frustrating. He's still 23 years old, and I've seen the rumors of maybe he'll make $20 to $22 million per year, according to the Brian Lewis article. If I'm Cam Thomas, I might take a short-term deal, 1 or 2 years, just to bet on myself, which I don't see why not. I feel like it might be a 2-year deal, second year's a player option sort of thing. I can see it working out that way because I don't think Cam Thomas will hit the market this offseason and get a ton of money. I don't see him getting, if he came in this year and had 25 points per game and played 75 games, you're talking about a guy who's probably going to make $40+ million per year. And now reports are saying he'll get half of that per year. So I feel bad for him in that standpoint, but for the Nets, it's good for a couple of reasons. You can A, probably get him back for cheaper, and B, I know some Nets fans think Cam Thomas is the worst and helps them lose, but I think having Cam Thomas away from the team hurts the team. So I think this helps the tank. So it's good for a couple reasons, but on a personal level and for him financially, I do feel bad for Cam Thomas. I do get a little nervous about his injury history. Of course, last year he missed some games with that ankle injury. I think he re-injured that last year too. But last year he played a career-high 66 games. Not terrible. I think that's one game above the threshold to be eligible for awards, which obviously Cam Thomas did not win any last year. He played 57 the year before that, his second year, and then played 67 his rookie year. So it's not that bad, but I feel like the last 2 years, between the bad sprained ankle against the Bucks last year, 3 hamstring injuries now, it's just like that's rough. So once again, still 23, very young player. I still think the ceiling's pretty high for him. And we did see the playmaking take another step. I still think there is room for him to grow, obviously. I don't think he'll be a number 1 option. Even a number 2 would be a bit of a stretch. But I still see a scenario where Cam Thomas can be a great number 3. Why can't he be this team's Darius Garland, right? You find your Mobley, you find your Mitchell. He can't be Darius Garland. I don't see why not. I feel like Cam Thomas has enough scoring ability, and he has I was about to say better body than Garland. That's a big pause, but he's definitely more of a bruiser. I'll put it that way. He's more of a bruiser than Darius Garland. Now, some Nets fans want Cam Thomas to lose weight. Of course, he intentionally put on some weight this past offseason. Maybe that contributed to his hamstring injuries. I'm not a doctor. I would think it has some type of impact, but I don't look at him gaining weight as him being like James Harden that last year in Houston. Like, I don't think he just purposely quit working out. Like, I think he intentionally put on that weight. And the hamstring stuff, like, maybe it was slightly involved with the weight gain, but I think overall it's just bad luck. And once you hurt your hamstring once, it's very hard to get back to 100%. Like, I know I'm definitely not Cam Thomas, but I injured mine back in November playing like a Turkey Bowl football game with my friends. I still feel it at times, right? This happened back in November. It's now late March, right? I still feel it. I'm definitely not going through the same rehab as an NBA player, but still, like, those things take a long time to go away. So I hope by next year he'll be fine. We saw how long it took James Harden to fully return from that hamstring. I don't think he'll ever be the same player. I've been saying that for a while now. Like, even Harden's next year after that hamstring, I still had doubts about him being the same player ever again. I think this is the closest he's ever looked to pre-hamstring Harden. This year in LA with the Clippers, he's looked pretty good. But for Cam Thomas, he does have youth on his side. He was 10 years younger than Harden when that happened to him, so I just hope Cam Thomas is good by next year, hopefully playing on a relatively cheap contract for the Nets. So that's that. So for the Nets-Pacers, the Nets, of course, had a bunch of chances to close out this game. A lot of momentum shifts in this game. It was annoying because the Pacers always kept coming back. They would tie the game. I feel like they tied the game 4 different times and could never take the lead. Then they finally did late in the game. They were up by 1 point. And I think they couldn't even get to 2. Like, it was a 1-point lead. Then they would go down by 1, go down by 2. Zaire Williams had that big 3-pointer at one point. Yeah, it was actually a 5-point lead. So the Nets had a 87% chance to win the game. 1:42 left to go in the fourth quarter. Zaire Williams made that left wing 3. Or this might have been that weird play. I'm thinking of a different one. This might have been the weird play where nobody on the Pacers defense was set and D'Lo just pushed the ball up the floor to Zaire. He literally had time to take a set dribble and just shoot a wide-ass open 3. So that put the Nets up 5 with 1:42 to go. I fired off my crash out tweet because I was not happy about the Nets winning this game. But then somehow they blew it and the Pacers came back. Mathurin, of course, went to the line, made all 3 of his foul shots, so shout out to him. I don't know, by the way, how that was not a delay of game on Brooklyn. That whole sequence of Mathurin at the foul line was so weird. He would take a free throw, then the Nets would have like a little huddle session in the paint. You would have Mathurin start feeling the ball. I think Zaire was feeling the ball. Like, it felt like there was at least 30 seconds between each foul shot. It was very weird. So I'm not sure why the refs were not calling delay of game or anything, but it is what it is. Then we get to overtime. The Nets once again had a pretty late lead. This was the one I was thinking about. So Zaire had that left wing 3-pointer, 1:15 to go, put them up by 1 point. And then TJ McConnell, he had that steal in the backcourt. That was a big play. They sent Siakam to the line. Siakam was awful, by the way. Like, I don't watch every Pacers game, so I can't say Siakam's the worst, but the way he played in this game was disgusting. Like, if you're a Pacers fan, like, Siakam's your guy when Halliburton's out, which unfortunately he was. But for Siakam to play the way he did, and I definitely have to credit Zaire Williams for the way he played on him, which was fantastic. But for Siakam, he was 2 of 8 from the field, 0 of 2 from 3, 2 of 3 at the line, 4 turnovers. He had that one ball on the baseline where I think it was an offensive rebound opportunity, and he had it in his hands, and it just slipped out of his hands. I'm like, what is wrong with this guy? Like, Siakam was pissing me off all night, but luckily in the end, the Pacers came away victorious. Going through the Nets now, Jalen Wilson, a night to forget about, did not make a single shot, had 4 attempts, 3 were threes, he missed everything. Zaire Williams, Zaire had a great game, 8 of 15, 6 of 12 from 3. I mean, I think the threes made is a career high, and I feel like the threes taken is definitely a career high. Like, Zaire Williams taking 12 threes is probably something we've never seen before. So, he played great though, he was awesome. Defensively, he was great shooting the ball, had 2 steals, 5 rebounds, and he was tied for the Nets high in scoring with 22. Nick Claxton, for the most part, a night to forget about. 31 minutes, 3 of 5, only 6 points. He was a minus 12, one of the worst on the team. Did have 14 rebounds, that's big. Had 6 offensive rebounds. He had that nice putback over Miles Turner at some point. I forget when this was, maybe fourth quarter, kind of mid to late fourth quarter. But Claxton had 5 turnovers. He had that one weird sequence where he dribbled the ball up twice and lost it both times. I remember those 2, but yeah, 5 turnovers for a center is pretty outrageous, so that's not what you want to see. D'Angelo Russell, a very inefficient 7 of 22, 3 of 12 from 3. He missed that one free throw in overtime. He did have 6 assists, and of course had 22 points, which tied Zaire. I do love that the Nets benched Cam Johnson with rest. Like, they finally do the sensible and responsible thing and not play Cam Johnson, which if they played Cam Johnson tonight, the Nets win this game, no doubt about it. So luckily it worked out, but to play, like, if you're gonna bench Cam Johnson, like, why not bench D'Lo as well? Like, why half-ass it? I just don't understand the Nets thinking process when it comes to benching players and resting players. It's just like, if you're gonna go for it, go for it. If you're gonna try and tank, go for it. Don't half-ass it. So obviously sitting Cam Johnson was huge. It got them the loss ultimately, but this was still very close, and D'Angelo Russell's inefficiency may have helped, but he still helped have 6 assists. Like, he definitely helped in that regard. I feel like, for me, why wouldn't you just call up, I would want to call up Dariq Whitehead. That makes the most sense. Give that guy 25, 30 minutes a night because you're 23 and 47. Your season's basically over. Why wouldn't you want to see your 21-year-old guard play in the NBA? Like, I get it, he's getting the reps in the G League, but this is the NBA. I want to see, Dariq Whitehead play, and I've seen Dariq Whitehead have good games. It's not like he's going to come up here and embarrass himself, So I just don't see the point of it. But anyway, so they run out there with D'Angelo Russell. He has his moments. He had some not big, but like had some clutch shots. He had that one floater. I keep forgetting if it was regulation or overtime. Keon Johnson was also very inefficient. Like, if you combine Russell and Keon, they shot 9 of 34. Wow. Yeah, that's rough. So 9 of 34 combined for the Brooklyn backcourt. Just not what you want to see. It's what I want to see, but not what you want to see if you're invested in those guys playing well. Keon Johnson's been playing better lately. He's had good moments. He went for a massive dunk in overtime over Miles Turner, who of course is one of the better shot blockers in the league, and he showed why. So he got stood up at the rim. It was one of the better blocks of the year, I feel like. So Miles Turner makes a huge play on Keon Johnson, who has a 48-inch vertical, I believe. So it's like, that's crazy to make that block. But Keon did play with some edge tonight. He definitely got some guys' faces and was drawing at some players, so he plays with an edge. I do like that about him. I'm not sure if the jump shot will ever come around. It's been better. He's been shooting better since the All-Star break, but I'm not fully convinced that Keon Johnson will ever be a knockdown shooter. Trendon Watford, I mean, if you watch the broadcast, they must have said it 50 times that Watford made a difference in the first quarter, and he definitely did, I have to say. The broadcast, by the way, was awful today. I forget who was on it. It was the guy who usually does the halftime show. So the play-by-play was Chris Shearn, who we see him like do Yankees games, not like play-by-play, but we see him like doing the Yankees batting practice show. I think that was Tim Capstraw. I'm not positive, but I think it was him. I recognize that voice. But these guys were horrible on the call at some point. I mentioned that they repeated the Trendon Watford thing like 1,000 times. That was annoying after a while. And there was the sequence where there was the goaltend and one, and the Pacers, scorekeeper took 2 points off the board, and they thought it was for a different play when I clearly heard from the TV that it was from a different call. Like, that was annoying. And Capstraw kept calling Benedict Mathurin Benjamin Mathurin. I'm like, really? Like, you've said this. I thought I heard it the first time. Then he said it multiple times in the second half. I'm like, come on, man. So I was not a big fan of the broadcast. Like, give me Iron Eagle every time. But I'm sure he's off doing March Madness, which I have not watched a single second of. So I'll get on that at some point. Like, this is when you know you're a wacko. If you're watching a Brooklyn Nets game in March where they're clearly going nowhere and you're just not watching the first day of March Madness in order to watch a Nets-Pacers game where the best player on each team is not playing. It's just like that's a different type of, different level of being a wacko. So if you watch this game tonight, maybe you watched this game and had the college games on in the background, like that's different. I could have done that, but I don't know. I don't really care about college basketball. I saw Trey Johnson got eliminated last night. That was a rough look for them at the end there for Texas. Anyway, Maxwell Lewis, actually no, Trendon Watford, I forgot to mention him. So yeah, Watford played very well in this game. He was taking the ball to the rim, definitely got in some guys' faces and got in that shoving match and threw some elbows, and he might get suspended. We'll see. He was thrown out of the game in the fourth quarter, did have 15 points, and yeah, he was assertive and just really good tonight going downhill. Maxwell Lewis, who's been playing pretty consistently lately ever since that there was some game he played in recently where he kind of broke out. Oh, I was at this game, duh. Yeah, it was the Boston game. So the Boston lost last Saturday night. I was in attendance once again. First Nets game of the year. It was pretty good. You know, I think it's still fun to go to a Nets game even though they suck and I want them to lose, but just the atmosphere was good, you know? Like it kind of brought me back to Jersey because they were dropping the t-shirts from the ceiling, which was awesome. Like I have not seen that since the Jersey days, the Izod Center. So that was fun. But yeah, the experience was good. But anyway, Maxwell Lewis, he played 16 minutes in that first Celtics loss, had 15 points in that game, shot 6 of 7. Next game versus the Hawks in that win on Sunday, he was 4 of 7, had 10 points. So he's been playing over 16 minutes the past 4 games. Obviously, it's great to see him back and healthy. He does have a really good looking jump shot. He has a nice step back. He plays good defense. So I kind of like Maxwell Lewis. I don't know what his ceiling is, but he definitely can be a rotation player. For Noah Clowney, a pretty weird game for him. He was 1 of 7 from 3, but he was 3 of 10 overall, made all 3 of his foul shots, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 turnovers, 10 points. Like he had some good moments. He had a very nice and one at one point where like he wasn't even looking at the basket. Kind of threw it up there, but he made it. So Clowney still has to grow. I feel like we've seen some pretty good games out of him lately, but overall, consistency is a major issue. Speaking of consistency and major issue, Day'Ron Sharpe. I feel like tonight was a pretty good Day'Ron game, especially in the first half. He had 4 offensive rebounds, which he is so good at. Day'Ron got the start in that game I went to on Saturday. I went to DraftKings and immediately bet the over on his rebounds because I'm like, yeah, this guy is a rebounding machine. You give him the minutes. He played 31 minutes, which might be a season high. I don't know. But he had 16 rebounds in that game. 16. That's insane. So Sharpe was 1 point off from a double-double, had a 9 and 16 game. Like, that's fantastic. So the guy is only 6'9", but he is one of the best rebounders in the NBA. There's no doubt about that. And at this point, I know Day'Ron has to really calm down with the fouls, but the way he's playing, it at least gives the Nets a chance to trade Nick Claxton and not really feel too bad about it. Like, I don't know if they will, but at least with Day'Ron playing the way he is, they of course have to re-sign him first, which I think they will. But with Day'Ron being a guy that can now stretch the floor to a degree, he is making threes at a pretty decent clip. I might have to eat my words on that. Let me see his percentage. Yeah, he's shooting 27%, but at least now it's respectable. He's at least taking enough attempts where you have to at least care about him shooting a wide open 3. I think it was the Hawks game on Sunday. He had like a great play where he blocked somebody on one end, then came down in transition in the corner on the move and made a corner 3. I'm like, this is our center doing this? Like, what the hell? So yeah, I've seen some good stuff out of Day'Ron lately. I wouldn't be too mad if they rolled with him as the starting center next year. If they, God forbid, pick low and draft Malawak out of Duke, I like him. But we know about Sean Marks. He's not too big on, taking centers too high. So that's one of those things. I'll believe it when I see it. Now on to, I think it's Tyrese Martin. Jalen Martin's gone. Tyrese Martin, 31 minutes, 1 of 8 from the field, 0 of 5 from 3, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 points, 4. Yeah, so Tyrese Martin, not the best game out of him. Usually he makes a couple of bullshit threes a game. So, didn't fall for him tonight. But overall, he's been pretty good. He's been better downhill lately. I've noticed him more confidence going to the rim. He's already 26. I thought he was younger, but 26. He's definitely shown signs of improvement. The Nets already gave him a contract, so I'm sure he'll be back here next year. And speaking of Tyrese Halliburton better get his ass out there on, I think Sunday they play, or Saturday. I forget when they play now. But yeah, whenever the Nets play their next game in Indiana, I do want to see Halliburton out there. I did see on the broadcast that Halliburton tried to play. They showed this one clip of him shooting a floater and then like kind of grimacing after. So maybe his back injury's acting up. I feel like back injuries are very day to day. So hopefully on the next time they play against Brooklyn, he wakes up on the right side of the bed. I do think that the Pacers play a back-to-back again against the Nets, which pisses me off because last night they played against the Mavericks and that game went to almost went to overtime. They basically felt like an overtime game. But the Pacers, yeah, so they played on Monday. That game went to overtime. They won by 2 over Minnesota. Then they played a very hard-fought, felt like an overtime game yesterday on Wednesday. Then tonight on Thursday, they play an overtime game and they win again. So they keep winning these games somehow. Actually, no, they don't play again. They play, the next game the Pacers play is Saturday against the Nets. So I don't know what I was thinking, or I might have heard something different. So they have their day to rest. I hope Halliburton's back and very healthy on Saturday. We'll see. I actually thought the Nets would win this game coming into it. I put money on them. Not too much. I put like $5 on them to win like 20 or something, but I felt like when I saw Halliburton out and how hard that the Pacers have had to play the past couple games, I just thought it was a perfect chance for a try-hard team like Brooklyn to come in there and get that win, which for a while I felt like that was a good bet. And of course they blew it, which the Nets have been so good at that lately, of like getting your hopes up and thinking they won the game and then blowing the game late. Like they do it so often now. They had a chance against Boston. They had a game against the Chicago Bulls on last Thursday where they were up, I forget how much. They might have been up by 12 in that game, and they blew that one. They had the Charlotte loss, which was the last time I talked to you guys. The Boston game, they lost by 2. This game, they had a 3-point lead with like 40 seconds to go. They blow that one. So going through the rest of this schedule, I do feel a little concerned because there are some matchups that at one point look tough. Now they don't look so tough. Indiana on Saturday, which I hope they lose that game. They'll definitely be underdogs, and I hope Halliburton plays. They play Monday at home against Dallas. This is very interesting because Dallas sucks. I think they're 1-9 in their past 10 now, which is just a shame. Dallas just lost that game to the Pacers last night, so they're coming off a tough loss. There is that report that Anthony Davis is trying to come back, which, hey, good for him, right? It's nice to see him come out there and try to play and not just sit there and collect checks in street clothes as he's been accused of doing. But it seems like the Mavericks want him to hold out the rest of the year, which makes sense. They're fighting for like the final 10th spot with the Suns, which the Suns are a joke, by the way. So there's still a chance they make the play-in, but overall it might be in their best interest to not make the play-in, kind of like they did 2 years ago, which got them Derek Lively. So anyway, I hope AD's back. I'm not counting on it, but at this point, like when I saw Dallas on the schedule about a month ago when Kyrie was still healthy and that team was fine, and I thought AD would be back by that point, I thought for sure that Dallas would sweep us, but now at this point I could see a scenario where the Nets sweep them. Or maybe, I think the most likely outcome is the Nets split with Dallas, which at this point might be the best case scenario. So anyway, hosting Dallas, home versus Toronto, home versus the Clippers, which I hope Kawhi plays. I think I already looked. I saw the Clippers have an off day in between. I think they played the Knicks 2 nights before, so hopefully Kawhi plays, hopefully Harden plays, and I hate James Harden, but I'll be rooting for him. At Washington, which they've been better lately, and they've actually been pretty good against the Nets this year for some reason, so anything can happen there. Dallas again, this time at Dallas, home versus Minnesota, versus Toronto at home, versus the Pelicans at home, versus the Hawks at home, at Minnesota, and they end with the Knicks on the Nets' home floor. Of course, the Knicks are kind of in a weird place in the standings where it's like they're pretty much almost locked into that 3 spot. Maybe not though, because the Knicks keep losing and now the Pacers are just 3 games back of them, so it's always possible they fall back a spot, especially with Brunson now like still out, and I don't think he's that close to returning, so we'll see where the Knicks end up. I want to see their score, actually. I know the Knicks were losing earlier. I think they lost to the Hornets, which is crazy. Yeah, wow, they lost by 17 points to the Hornets. That's pretty crazy. So the Knicks lose, that's great. The Pacers beat the Nets, that's great. We need the Raptors to win, who are down by 4 in Golden State right now. I would like for the Bucks to lose, but they're up by 12 against the Lakers. The Lakers are without Luka, and I think Bron's out too, I'm pretty sure. I saw that Dame Lillard's out, but still, like, no LeBron. Yeah, Bron's out, and there's no Doncic. So it's going to be a tough one for the Lakers to win, but there's always a chance. A lot of time left in that game. Still not even halftime yet. So I'll probably end my night watching the Raptors and Lakers and until I go to bed here at some point. But anyway, for the Nets tank going forward, it's getting real close here. I mean, these 5 teams here with the Nets, the Sixers, and the Raptors, they're only separated by a game and a half, so much can change. If I'm Nets ownership, I'm going all out to tank. They have not shown the willingness to do that, so I'm not getting my hopes up. But if I'm them, I am just shutting down Cam Johnson. I'm shutting down D'Angelo Russell. I'm giving Dariq Whitehead those minutes. If I really want to lose, I'm giving the minutes to Reese Beekman, who I think is awful, and then throw out Jalen Wilson, right? You can easily sell to Adam Silver and whoever cares about NBA teams tanking that we want to shut down Cam Johnson because we want to trade him in the offseason. We want to make sure he's healthy. The Nets did this with Brook Lopez, by the way. I'll talk about it in a second here. So you shut Cam Johnson down. There's real reasons for it. The guy has an injury history. We want to trade him. Our season's over. We want to get a better look at Jalen Wilson. That's 4 reasons right there. So they have their reasons to sit Cam Johnson the rest of the year. And same for D'Angelo Russell. It's like, all right, the guy's a free agent. Don't want to get him hurt. We want to give Dariq Whitehead more minutes. Like, you can make a lot of arguments to an NBA, commissioner's office as to why you're doing the moves you're doing. So anyway, yeah, the Brook Lopez thing and Thaddeus Young. So the first year that Sean Marks was here, I responded to someone on Twitter the other day because I knew I saw this at some point. This was 9 years ago at this point. But I knew I saw at one point that when Sean Marks was here, that he intentionally sat Brook Lopez, who was the team's best player at the time, and arguably the second best player in Thaddeus Young. He sat those guys on purpose the final 6 games of the year. I thought it was the final 10 games at first, which would have been pretty crazy. So he sits those guys the last 6 games of the year. But keep in mind that during that season in 2016, the Nets did not have their own draft pick. So Sean Marks ultimately pulled the plug on Brook Lopez and Thaddeus Young with 6 games to go, and they didn't have their own pick. Now they have their own pick, and this is like the prime opportunity for Sean Marks to do the same thing he did back in his first year. Here's the article. Brian Lewis, April 3rd, 2016. Nets pull plug on Brook Lopez and Thaddeus Young's seasons. The quote from the interim coach, Tony Brown, which, wow, that takes me back. Who was he? He filled in for who? Lionel Hollins, maybe? I think that was that. Lionel Hollins coaching the Nets was a crazy time. It's like hard to even remember that. But anyway, yeah, so Tony Brown's quote was, Brook and Thad are probably not going to play, obviously, for the rest of the season. We're going to shut those guys down, obviously, get them to recover from the long, grueling season. Get that process started early. So they have that quote, and I know tanking wasn't as bad. I guess it was, because you still had the Sixers doing it, but like, tanking wasn't that frowned upon back then. I feel like now the NBA front office has like a microscope on these teams, which they should, because some of what these teams do is just so shameless. The Raptors sit all their good players in late fourth quarter games when they're close. The Sixers are sitting Maxey and Oubre when they probably could be playing right now. The Jazz are doing everything in their power to make sure they get the best pick possible, which they did pass the Wizards I saw the other night. I know Washington's back in first technically in the tank standings, but I really thought there was no chance that Washington would blow that first spot. They still might keep it, but the fact that the Jazz were able to catch up to the Wizards is very impressive, if you want to say it like that. The Pelicans are still 4 games back of Brooklyn. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's still very unlikely that the Pelicans pass the Nets. They did win last night, and their schedule going forward is still pretty tough. They have games they're going to win, I think, like the Sixers, Charlotte. They play the Nets one more time, but you have to think the Nets will also win some games. So, like, if you told me the Nets were going to lose every game the rest of the year, I would say maybe. The Pelicans obviously pass the Nets, but I don't see that being the case. This Nets team is on too much bullshit. Like, they'll definitely win a few more games, whether it's 3, 4, 5, like, they'll get it done. But the seeding absolutely matters. There's fans out there, you might be one of them watching this video, that say, It's a lottery. It doesn't matter. Well, it matters. There's definitely differences between where you are finishing. I mean, as I said before, like if the Nets finish where they are right now, which is the 5th worst record, they have a 42% chance at a top 4 pick. If they drop down 2 spots to 7, which is very possible, that drops down to 31.9%. So like you're dropping basically 10% right there in terms of your chances of getting a top 4 pick. And then your chances of getting the first overall pick drop by 3%, which is not crazy, but still 3% in terms of having lottery balls, it matters. Or ping pong balls, I meant to say, sorry. So anyway, this season is almost over. As I said plenty of times, this has been such a frustrating year. I feel like every game I want to rip my hair out, but they keep finding ways to lose at the end, so I've been leaving happy. But them winning on Sunday pissed me off. Cam Johnson was great, had 28 points, and I'm sitting here like, why is this guy playing? I just don't get it. It just annoys the hell out of me. There's now 12 games left in this season. 55 losses is still on the table. They're at 47 losses right now. So if they go 2-10 the rest of the year, they do reach 55 losses. I still think they'll get to 3 wins. Might be 4. It depends how serious they take the whole tanking thing. Like if they really go all out and do what I want them to do and sit Russell and sit Cam Johnson, they might win 2 or 3 games. But if they keep playing those guys, which I feel like they will because they're idiots, I feel like they'll get 4 more wins, maybe 5, God forbid, which if they do that, they're probably going to finish with the 7 seed, which sucks. And I meant 7 seed on the tankathon standings, not 7 seed overall. That's probably not mathematically possible at this point. Anyway, it was a great loss. Great block by Miles Turner at the end. Nembhard got ejected, which was dumb in overtime. Didn't like that. But overall, they got it done. D'Lo and Keon Johnson, very inefficient. We saw very good stuff out of Zaire Williams, which is great. The Nets got him for like nothing. I still can't believe that trade happened. And of course, he changed his jump shot. He does that thing where he now hops into his shot, which I think Russell Westbrook does a similar thing where it's like you kind of you get the pass and you're kind of already on your tippy toes and kind of hop into the shot. Like there's definitely a phrase for it. I forget now. Back when I actually used to play basketball, I definitely knew what that term was called, and now I just don't. But the way he takes his set shots are different now from what they were in Memphis, so whichever Nets coach corrected that little flaw in his jumper, they've definitely been working some magic. So we'll see. Maybe I'll talk to you guys next weekend, which would be Saturday night, March 29th. It depends what I'm doing. They play the Wizards that night, which they probably will win that game. I do like that game's on a back-to-back. I do like that aspect, so maybe that'll help the Nets lose that game. But of course, a lot can happen. The injury reports are crazy at this time of the year. Like the Nets may not face any good players. Like AD might be out. I'm sure Brandon Ingram will be out for the Toronto games. Zion might be out. Kawhi might be out. You just don't know. So these things are... It's just you got to take it day by day, sadly. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. I went longer than usual. Was not expecting that, but it's almost bedtime, so I got to get going. Keep the losses coming, and I'll talk to you guys next time.